Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, we'll be presenting the first of three parts in the series of from research to authorship, which inshallah will be the process of research manuscript writing, and it'll be presented by myself, Dr. Kamal Osman al-Mahi. I've recently graduated from the Faculty of Medicine, Ibn Sina University, with first-class honors in October 2019. And Alhamdulillah, I've also managed to claim multiple prizes during my time as a medical student, most notably the prize in community medicine, which I've obtained in 2018. And also in the field of para-academics, I was also formerly the local public health officer at Medicine Sudan for the term 2018-19. And also my first research paper was published recently on May 4th, 2020. So now we dive into the main reason as to why this session is being presented, and that is to present the structure of a research manuscript. We'll begin each stage one stage at a time. The first part of which is the abstract. It's the first part of any research paper, whether it's original research or a case report or systematic review or meta-analysis or so on. A few major points which we must note about the abstract is that although it's the first part visible in any research paper, it's always the part which is written last, because essentially it's a very brief collection of all the information present in the paper, and also the abstract. It's essentially a glimpse into the article, so that's something we need to be wary of, and also to decipher which information is important and which is unimportant with respect to the abstract. Some of its properties are that it's concise and informative, very briefly describing the purpose of performing the study, the methods used to conduct the study, the major results, and also the conclusions, plus or minus recommendations. Finally, regarding the overview of the abstract, is that a lot of journals, they incur a word limit. In most journals, it tends to be 250 words, although in a minority of journals, it may be 300 words. The abstract itself also has subsections. In most sections, in most medical journals, the first of which must be included is the background, which is generally a brief overview of the research problem at hand, and usually in the abstract it doesn't increase above 3 sentences or so. Second of which is the objectives or aims, whether specific or general, to describe the purpose of the study. Third of which is the study design. The study design needs to be mentioned briefly in details as well. For example, if it's community based, it must be mentioned. If it's cross section, it must be mentioned. The methodology. The methodology is the fourth part. The main points of research methodology here should be obtained. Primarily the sampling technique, the ethical approval, and the methods of data analysis, whether it's through SPSS, through Excel, or manual, or so on. The results. When it comes to the results, although we may have so many in the script, only the most relevant should be included in the abstract. And this is followed by the conclusions, which is a brief collection of the results, with or without the recommendations for further research. And below the abstract, we also have a section for keywords. And most journals tend to incur a range of between 3 to 8 keywords in the study. Secondly, we begin with the introduction. This is the second part of the research manuscript. Regarding the introduction, as we may be aware, provides a factual background. The problem which is being investigated is clearly defined. Solutions may be proposed to help tackle the research problem, and also a brief literature survey and their scope and the justification of the work done may be written in this section. Again, any previous literature may arise from websites or different journals, and this must be cited, as we'll discuss later. Objectives may also be included in this section, particularly the specific objectives or the research questions. The third part is the methodology, or the materials and methods. And under these subheadings, the methodology must be presented. The first of which is the study design and area, during which you describe briefly the study area, the population characteristics, or the population number itself, and also a brief description about the region where the study is being conducted. The second subheading is the sampling size or sampling technique. The sample size must be the sample size is an absolute must. However, the sampling technique is it merits details which dive further deeply. Firstly, the sampling size it may be deciphered by purposive sampling, or in most cases by equations. The sampling technique, however, is deciphered according to situations. Say, for example, if it's a large scale study, at the level of states or at the level of a whole nation, it may be through cluster sampling, or in some cases, if it's facility based, it may be through stratified sampling, or quite rarely convenience sampling. Third of which is the eligibility criteria, which is the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Generally speaking, inclusion criteria is rather straightforward. For example, if we have a study in which over 18s are only allowed to participate in the study, we may say the inclusion criteria is over 18s according to constitutional regulations. However, exclusion criteria doesn't solely mean the direct opposite of the inclusion criteria. However, it's rather a means of filtration of the population which is included. For example, if we have over 18s, for example, to participate in a study regarding alcohol consumption, for example, in this case, exclusion criteria would be pregnant women. This is only one of many examples. The fourth subheading would be the data collection tools and methods. In this respect, the data collection tools must be described in details. If there's different parameters in this collection tool, they must also be described. If they're divided into sections, these sections must also be described in details. And also, if there's any scoring, if there's any method of scoring in these data collection tools, they must also be disclosed. So, in brief, this subheading contains the detailed description of study instruments and the means of obtaining the data, whether it's through an online survey or through face-to-face interviews, and so on. The penultimate subheading in this area is the data analysis. Here we must disclose the platform and version of this platform used to analyze the data, the variables used to analyze the data, whether independent or dependent variables, and the types of statistics implemented. So for example, we may use basic tests, we may use advanced tests, simple descriptive tests, or for example, we may use odds ratios or chi-squares to find any associations. Finally, we have the ethical considerations, which comprise the ethical approval and consent methods. When it comes to ethical approval, in any original research article involving involving humans or animals, ethical approval must be obtained from the research from any research committee within the institution from which you're conducting the research. And also consent methods, particularly in community-based studies, consent must be approved, and also the anonymity of these participants must also be maintained throughout the study. The fourth part of the manuscript is the results. A few points which must be taken into consideration regarding the results. Again, like the abstract, it must be clear and concise. The second point is that it must give adequate information to allow for reproduction of results in other studies. In this respect, if there's another study to be conducted in the same field of research, researchers may be interested in citing your study and also using your results in order to support theirs, in order to support their case, which is being investigated. The third point is that if there are different parameters in the study, they must be given different subheadings. For example, a clear case in point would be a CAP study, short for knowledge, attitude, and practice. In this case, knowledge would be considered as a parameter, as would attitude and practice. And as such, 3 subheadings must be given to these yardsticks. Knowledge given 1 subheading, attitude given 1 subheading, and practice given 1 subheading. The fourth point regards tables and figures. Captions are the most important point regarding the tables and figures. In order to distinguish between them, the captions must be listed above tables and below figures. Figures, they can be whether they're graphs, pie charts, bar charts, and so on. Another case in point is that although results may be presented in charts in 2D or 3D, there are some journals which may refuse to accept unless the results are presented in 2D. And another point to mention is that in most journals, in at least 9 out of 10 journals, the text contains the journals prior to submission of the manuscript. The tables themselves must be explanatory, without the need of referring to external resources, and figures should also be self-explanatory. No tables or figures should be given without discussion or reference inside the text. For example, if we're referring to results, we must also cite these tables or charts within the text itself. The fifth and penultimate part, which we'll be discussing today, is the section for the discussion. A lot of students, they tend to ask themselves why must the discussion be included in the script? First and foremost, there are many reasons. The first reason is that the discussion is there in order to allow for the interpretation and description of how significant your findings are in light of what was already known about the research problem being investigated. And secondly, the discussion is there to allow the researcher to explain any new understanding or fresh insights about the problem after taking the results into consideration. And secondly, the discussion section is there to explain how your research has moved the reader's understanding of the problem forward from the introduction. After having reading the introduction, the reader may have a brief idea of the research problem at hand, although this may be taken a step further by the discussion. The second question which we must address in the discussion is why is it such a crucial part of the paper? By many researchers, it's considered to be the most important part, and it's for the following reasons. First and foremost, it demonstrates your ability as a researcher to think critically, to develop solutions according to findings from the study, and also to formulate deeper understanding of the problem being investigated. Also, it allows the researcher to present the importance of the study and how it contributes to filling existing gaps. So essentially, whilst writing the proposal, one section which must be included in the proposal is the justification of the study. This part essentially takes over. You're given a chance anew to discuss the importance of your study and how it contributes to filling existing gaps of knowledge in the problem being investigated. There are a few rules and principles which we must apply in the section for the discussion. Again, like the results and like the abstract, clarity and concision are an absolute must. And also, like any composition, the discussion must follow a logical stream of thought, and there must be a logical flow of ideas whilst writing the discussion. And also, like the introduction, it's written in the present tense, particularly for established facts. However, the past tense must be used when referring to previous works and references in the past tense. And again, whilst referring to specific works, there's a specific manner in which we cite these works. Again, it'll be discussed shortly. And if needed, we can use subheadings for results. Again, an example which I tend to like is the example of knowledge, attitude, and practice. One subheading can be used for each parameter. We may give in the discussion a subheading to knowledge, a subheading to attitude, and a subheading to practice. So what must we include in the discussion? And this is something which tends to confuse some researchers, in particular students before they do to submit their graduation thesis. A lot of questions which I was asked previously during my time as the final year medical students from my juniors was what to include in the discussion. First and foremost, we must explain the results. We must comment if they were expected, and also be prepared to explain any trends in the results. And if they were unexpected or profound, or if there's an outlier in any of the results, we must dive into greater depth and try to attempt to explain why they occurred. If there's any unusual patterns or sequences, these also must be noted and their meanings to be explained. And thirdly, regarding references, again we refer to previous studies in the discussion, just as we may in the introduction, and also from time to time, in rare cases, during the methodology, particularly in the sampling size and sampling techniques. We refer to previous studies primarily for two reasons. Number one, to compare the results of our own study with those of recently conducted studies addressing the same problem, and also to use similar results from recent studies to support a claim which we may be making in our research. And also, the more recent, the better. Many journals tend to prefer that the resources used in the discussion don't exceed 5 years prior to when the research manuscript is being submitted. Another reason is the deduction. We must also find ways in which these results can be applied in the real world, whether it be through recommendations, through lessons learned, through lessons learned from from the study participants, and also to propose best practices. Proposing best practices and lessons learned and recommendations. These can easily be acknowledged in recent studies, particularly studies conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic. So now we come to the organization and structure of the discussion. And in my opinion, it's just like writing any any essay or composition. We have to imagine the discussion as an inverted pyramid. First, we begin generally, and then slowly but surely, we dive into the specific area or field of interest. We also, at the same time, we try to link our findings to literature, in this case citing previous studies, to theory, and to practice. Also, we must address the research problem and also the specific objectives or research questions, because a good discussion essay always reiterates the purpose why the study was conducted, and if these purposes have been fulfilled. The patterns and principles from the major findings of the study must also be addressed and described from the proper perspectives. At first, we have the answer or results according to the specific objectives or research questions. And then these results can be explained further and also reiterated through the citation of previous studies. Again, the more recent, the better. And also these questions must also be addressed in the same order as the results section. Another important point during the discussion is that we must also analyze any unexpected findings. They should firstly be described, and also possible explanations must be at the ready. And also, if they have any significance to the overall results. And finally, they must be described and explained by order of their occurrence. Finally, any discussion in any research manuscript must include a section dedicated to the limitations of the study. So what do we mention here? We mention on the first on the relative importance with respect to the overall interpretation of the results and the significance. Have your limitations affected the results? Could we have yielded more accurate results if we did something different? And also, the last question to address is, are these limitations significant? Do they have an impact on our results? And whilst writing the study limitations, we must avoid apologetic tones. This is something peer reviewers may notice whilst after the script has been submitted. This is something that will catch the attention of any of the 4 or 5 reviewers who are taking into consideration your manuscript. So the best policy here is to be honest and to be self-critical. The last point regarding the discussion is that it contains a concise summary, briefly explaining the importance of the findings and conclusions, and also how these conclusions may support broader knowledge of the problem, and if they can be applied at a wider scale, followed by recommendations for further research. The final part of the research manuscripts is the references. In any reference section, the authors tend to follow one of two styles when it comes to referring to different works, and these are numbered by order of appearance in the text. Now these may appear in the introduction, sometimes in the methodology, not in the results, but they will be present. They will be present in the discussion. Again, these are numbered by order of their appearance in the script, and they're written as Arabic numerals in parentheses, square brackets, or in superscripts. I'm not sure if the number 1 is visible, or a combination of two of the three. Generally, the superscript is included, and this may be surrounded by either the parentheses or the square brackets. From a personal point of view, I tend to prefer the superscripts or the parentheses. The first of the two styles is the Vancouver style, and as such you may see here the style is written as follows. For every author that's present, they're written in the same order as present in the article which is being cited. And for every author we have written the surname followed by the initials of the forenames given. So for example, Shu, YZ, Geng, BC, Mao, HQ, Shu, XS. Shu here would be the surname, for example, and the XS would be the forenames. Finally, Yang, HL. Yang would be the surname, HL would be the forenames, the initials for the forenames given. And this is followed by the year of publication, again surrounded by parentheses, 2010, given in this example, and this is followed by the title. This is followed by the title of the script, which is being cited. A comparison of the proximal femoral nail anti-rotation device and dynamic hip screw in the treatment of unstable petrocantaric fractures. Again, the name of the journal in italics, the issue and volume in bold, colon, and if there's an issue given, we must add that. And finally, the page number must be included. And if there's a link present, please add it. Again, the author's surname, initials of the forenames given, followed by the year of publication in parentheses, followed by the title, the journal in italics, issue and volume, issue, colon, volume in bold, followed by the page numbers, and followed by a link if present. Now regarding the Harvard style, one point which we must take into account is that the Harvard style can be presented by either author date or author time. However, when it comes, in either author dates or author journal. In this case, medical journals use the author dates. This is the link which describes the Harvard style in details. I'll present it in the comment section below after the end of this live feed. And also, like the Vancouver style, it has particular means of being presented. Although there are some differences which may be present. We have one author here in this example. We have Gray L. Although we didn't use commas to separate the forenames and the surname in the Vancouver style, here in the Harvard style, the surname and forenames initials are separated by a comma, and also the year of publication is not surrounded by parentheses, unlike the Vancouver style. This is again followed by the title, exploring how and why young people use social networking sites. And again, like the Vancouver style, the title of the journal in which this work was published is written in italics. However, the issue and volume is not written by is not written in the colon format. It's written in shorthand. For example, here we have volume 34, number 2, vol.34 followed by a comma, no.2 followed by a comma, and the page number is also cited here as pp, pp.175 to 194. Again, surname followed by a comma, then followed by the initials of the forename, then the year of publication, then the title is normal, the journal in italics, volume number, and issue number in shorthand, and the page number in range, and also in a normal font. And if there's a link, this link must also be added if present. And to conclude, we must all be very wary that after all, the ultimate goal of research is not objectivity, but truth. In conducting more research, we create more knowledge. Again, after all, the ultimate goal of research is not objectivity, but truth, as stated by Ellen Deutsch. Thank you all very much for attending, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at any time. I'll return to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.